When Elon Musk raised his arm at the inauguration, social media erupted. AOC criticized the gesture as reminiscent of a Nazi salute, while his supporters passionately defended it as a tribute to ancient Rome. But here's what most people, including this gentleman, might not know. The Roman salute isn't Roman at all. In the 1920s, Italy, a distinctive gesture emerged in political circles, the straight arm salute. According to the official narrative of the time, this was the revival of an ancient Roman salute, a customary greeting supposedly exchanged between citizens throughout the Roman Empire. Historical texts and educational materials of the era presented this as an established historical fact. Yet when historians and archaeologists examine actual Roman artifacts and texts, a different picture emerges. Historian Martin Winkler's research found that not a single Roman work of art, sculpture, coinage, or painting displays a salute of the kind that appeared in 20th century political movements. This raises intriguing questions. If this wasn't actually a Roman greeting, where did it come from? And how did a gesture with questionable historical roots become such a powerful political symbol? Back then, hand signals weren't about politics. They were just practical. Romans needed ways to communicate when it was too noisy to hear orders. Military leaders used flags, trumpets, and yes, hand signals to direct their troops. We can see this in ancient Roman carvings like those on Trajan's column, where commanders raised their arms to address their soldiers. These weren't like the rigid salutes we think of today. They were real communication tools when shouting just wouldn't cut it. But as Rome changed from a republic to an empire, these practical signals started to become something else. What began as battlefield necessity evolved into fancy court rituals. The emperors and their officials turned these practical gestures into ways to show who had power and who didn't. It became a kind of silent language that said, "I'm in charge here." So where did the idea of a Roman salute actually come from, if not from Rome itself? The answer lies primarily in artistic imagination. The straight-arm gesture first appeared in 18th century neoclassical paintings like Jacques-Louis David's Oath of the Horatii. Later, early cinema reinforced this invented tradition, most influentially in the 1914 Italian epic Cabiria, which featured characters performing the gesture in its fictional, ancient world. What began as artistic license gradually transformed into perceived historical fact. This reimagined version of Rome, with its powerful visual gestures, proved far more useful for modern political movements than the complex reality of actual Roman history. Leaders like Mussolini in Italy were obsessed with the idea of recreating the Roman Empire's glory. They adopted this made-up Roman salute as their symbol. At first, only Mussolini's inner circle and hardcore supporters used it. It was like a secret handshake that showed you were part of the club. But things didn't stop there. What started as an exclusive gesture for the in-crowd soon became something everyone had to do. It wasn't about showing your loyalty anymore. It became about proving you weren't against them. Mussolini's rallies turned into massive performances. Thousands of people raising their arms together wasn't just about honoring their leader. It was visual proof that they were all falling in line. Historians who study fascism have documented how Mussolini's government used these ritualized movements to build loyalty. Modern brain science helps explain why these gestures work so well. They tap into something deeper than rational thought, our basic human instincts for belonging to a group. The Nazis took this idea even further with their Sieg Heil salute. At first, it separated the true believers from everyone else, but eventually it became mandatory everywhere, in schools, offices, public events. People who lived through that time describe how you couldn't get through a day without performing this gesture. It wasn't about showing your support anymore. It was about avoiding punishment. A simple arm movement became a powerful tool of control. History gives us a warning here. In both Italy and Germany, what began as voluntary symbols for insiders became tools of mass control. The pattern is clear and concerning. When powerful figures use gestures echoing this troubled past, they're starting a familiar pattern. What begins as signals among a small group can grow into something far more significant. The issue isn't whether these are identical to historical salutes, but why leaders would choose movements with such dark echoes. If we normalize them, history warns us what comes next. These symbols rarely stay with elites. They spread, transform, and eventually pressure everyone to conform. By recognizing this early, we might avoid repeating a dangerous cycle. What began as a fabricated connection to ancient glory now serves as a warning from history. We can understand these silent signals of power or risk being silently governed by them.